I'm going to say who you are, and then I
Very briefly about
okay.
what you do. Okay.
No, that's fine. Just really. Yeah. Yeah, 1 billion. 18, almost 8 lives in Santiago. Yeah. Long journey then. Yeah, long. Yes.
Maybe the words will be slightly different, but the question's the same.
Okay.
So I don't read it exactly the way it's written, but the question's the same.
Yes. Because I prepared myself. The questions were before many, and then they are still now to.
Yeah, and then hopefully you'll find that you're too, and then you know. Also, you're going to ask the panel to, I'll introduce you, but then I'll ask you to say a few words about you and your. I think it's better that you say that than I say.
background.
I'll say that. Could you tell us a little about a bit about your role and so I'll do that with everyone. It's a good suggestion of how many we should block the doors and the entrance be just to the back because like later people will come late.
I wonder if we could lead people in from the once we start, because we're live streaming and otherwise people will be walking.
Fine. What's it? Just tell us the time when we can. Is it? Do you want to do it in the next couple of minutes? Like,
What time dinner? What did you say? Yeah, maybe we should. Yeah, because we're starting at 2.
yeah, fine. We'll do it now.
Can we close and even lock the doors?
Yeah, that's probably a good shout.
Yeah, I think the only way is chair
Hello, I'm Mike Mullane, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to one of the most important meetings at the IEC GM. And it's important not in terms of governance, not because of the presence of senior IEC officers, although I am delighted to spot one or two board members among the audience, but important in terms of what matters most, the content. And the content today goes directly to the IEC strategic plan. Let's think of the first theme of that strategic plan, enabling an all-electric and connected society. I like to think of that as an algorithm for building a better tomorrow. And the key component of that algorithm is about enabling universal access to affordable, clean, and sustainable energy. And then let's look at the second of the three themes, and that's about fostering a sustainable world. And so obviously the work we do in standards and conformity assessment related to renewable energy is absolutely critical. And I'm delighted that today I'm joined by a stellar panel, and I'll introduce you to them later. And they'll help me get through four key topics. The first is the critical role of the IEC in driving the transition to renewables. Second is how IEC can help address challenges related to global deployment of renewable energy. The absolutely fundamental importance of global collaboration is number three. And number four is key priorities in terms of new standards and conformity assessment. And it's my pleasure to ask our first speaker, Alistair McKinnon, who's the chair of our conformity assessment for renewable energies, IECRE, and a leader of the wind industry in the UK, to give us an address and set the tone for today's meeting.
Thank you very much, Mike. Oh gosh, I'm loud, haven't I? Right. Thanks, Mike, for those opening words. And as you probably gathered from my accent, I'm a bit of a local here. So if I can give you the local welcome to the general meeting here in Edinburgh, I see myself more as a missionary because I'm actually from Glasgow, which is about 40, 50 miles away. So I see myself as a bit of an evangelist coming here to the east coast of Scotland. So welcome to the United Kingdom, welcome to Scotland, and I hope you enjoy your time here. Thanks again, Mike, for those opening words. Perhaps I should just say a little word or two of introduction as to who I am. Alistair McKinnon, complicated name. My friends just call me Al, so please feel free just to call me Al in that sense. I've been involved in IEC standards development initially since 1984. And I know my youthful good looks betray the fact that I've been involved in doing this for over 41 years now, in that sense. And then I kind of moved to the dark side of what we do. Standards development is very much the place that it's at. But within IEC, we have 4 conformity assessment systems. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute or two. Conformity assessment is generally kind of seen as the kind of poor sister and brother of standards development. So over the next 10 or 15 minutes, I'm going to try and enthuse you about the role of conformity assessment and how really that makes a difference and how conformity assessment and standards development actually work in partnerships. They're really 2 sides of the same coin. And I don't want to put anyone on the spot here, but I try and like to be low-key and interactive, right? So I have a little question for you. Would anyone like to give me a definition of conformity assessment? And usually when I ask this, everyone in the room looks at their laptop, looks at the floor, no one wants to answer. But if there's anyone who would like to hazard a guess as to what conformity assessment, dare I say, I'm conscious we've got colleagues online as well. Yes, gentleman in the middle. Can I ask your name, sir? Nice to meet you. And we haven't spoken before this, and that is a perfect answer. What I'm going to do now is just to go into a little bit more about what Dan has actually said there. So what is conformity assessment, right? Because I think we need to understand, if you're not familiar with conformity assessment, what it is before we can actually talk about the applicability. So conformity assessment, we have first-party conformity assessment. And that's something that is usually undertaken by the manufacturer or a supplier. And here within Europe, an example of that would be the CE marking that we have. And that's really the first step on the journey towards conformity assessment. We then move on to second-party conformity assessment. And this might be something that is undertaken by the customer. And we've been talking about this over the last couple of days, and one of the best illustrations of this I can get is if you were going to your local market and you were choosing some fruit or vegetables, you as the customer are undertaking a form of conformity assessment. I want that apple because it looks nice, and I don't want that one because it doesn't look so nice in that sense. So that would be second-party conformity assessment. And then the third one, which will really be the focus for my remarks over the next, I'm looking at Mike to keep me on time here, the next 10 minutes or so, would be third-party conformity assessment. And this is ordinarily undertaken by an independent organisation. So this is someone who is independent of the supplier or the end user, and the deliverable that we have from that is typically a test report, an audit report, an assessment report, a type or a full certificate. So there are a number of what I would classify as conformity assessment deliverables. People use the word certification interchangeably with conformity assessment. So that's the generic overview of conformity assessment. In our IEC world, what does conformity assessment actually mean for us? And there's a very clear definition here in our rules and guidance documents. And it says there that conformity assessment is the demonstration that specified requirements, i.e. IEC standards, relating to a product, a process, a system, a person, or a body are fulfilled. So you'll see there that this doesn't just apply to a product. It can apply to a whole number of different parts of that life cycle in that sense. And this is where the linking of standards development and conformity assessment are really important. I could not do my job as chair of the IEC system if we didn't have good, technically robust standards. So the two go together. So I've put a little link in there. I think at the end you will get a copy of these slides there. So there will be a hyperlink in there to the IEC website. And if I can encourage you to use the IEC website, there is an enormous amount of fabulous information in there, and hopefully made things a little easier for you by giving you the link there. So within IEC, we currently have 4 conformity assessment systems: IEC-Q, IEC-EX, which is for explosive type situations, the IEC-EE system, which I understand to be the longest and the largest system that we have. That's the electrical engineering one. And then the one that I'm going to be talking about today, which is the IEC-RE, that's the renewable energy system. So we are the youngest of the systems. And this week, we actually have our 10th birthday. We had our first meeting in the US in September 2014. And I'll actually be chairing our management meeting tomorrow and Friday here in Edinburgh. So what are the benefits of conformity assessment? And I've tried to list a few bullet points here as the benefits that I see of conformity assessment. It's really confirmation of compliance. So within IEC, we're using third-party organizations. So these will be independent test labs, inspection bodies, or certification bodies. And they themselves have to meet a criteria called peer assessment, but we don't have time today to go into the detail of that. I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone who's interested in that. And what we're doing through the confirmation of compliance and through our rules and processes is to confirm that what is written in a standard is actually true in life. Because we can give a standard and people may have their own interpretation of that, but through conformity assessment, we have an agreed set of principles. So I think for me, the first benefit is confirmation of compliance. Through that confirmation of compliance, I think we have an increase in trust. So if you go to buy let's say a product, if you're buying, let's say a television, you could buy the Alistair McKinnon television, which has no form of conformity assessment, and you're taking quite a large risk. Or you can buy one of the, let's say, internationally accepted brands in that sense, and you have a degree of confidence that that product will meet its requirements. So you have that element of trust through the conformity assessment process. I also think another benefit is the decrease in risk, and I'll say a little bit more about that later on. The other thing that we have, and the beauty of the IEC conformity assessment systems, is that we have, and well, we don't have always, but we're looking to achieve global harmonization of what we do. So that something, let's say, tested in China and certified in Germany would be acceptable here in the UK. And that's quite a good example there. And within the renewable energy sector, which is now, if you like, a global business, that very much happens. So we have that harmonization. You've got that confidence, you've got the trust, and you're de-risking what you do. The other benefit that we have as well is test once, inspect once, and certify once. So there's an economic benefit in doing that you don't have to repeat the same test or the same certification on multiple occasions. Consequently, through that building of trust and that harmonisation, then we facilitate national and international trade. And within the sector that I'm involved in, within renewable energy, that is very apparent to see. And lastly, what it does is it gives us a common understanding of what is actually required and what the expectations are in that sense. So these are really just my own thoughts on the benefits of conformity assessment. Oops, what have I not done here? Asmita, can you help me? My clicker's not working. It's not working. There we are, right. I just leave you to drive it from now on, okay? Thanks, Asmita. So what I thought I would do here is a picture tells 1,000 words. So I've got 4 photographs here from the business that I'm involved in, which is renewable energy. So on the top left-hand corner there, presumably you can all see that, hopefully, that is a large wind turbine blade undergoing test. And that's a photograph that I took about 2 weeks ago. Would anyone like to hazard a guess on the size of the blade? Just shout out. You're all far too shy today. Okay, right. So that blade is well in excess of 130 meters. These are huge devices. And the root of that blade, you could almost drive a double-decker bus into it. It is that big. So that's the kind of thing that we would do, and we would issue a component certificate for, because that is a component of a much larger device. So looking at the bottom left-hand photograph, you'll see a wind turbine tower being constructed there. And a tower would be another example of a component certificate. And what you do is we build up this modular approach of components, and then we create a type. So over on the right-hand side, you'll see a complete wind turbine. The conformity assessment of that will comprise of a number of components: the blades, the towers, the generator, the electrical aspects. Everything that goes to make up that device can have its own conformity assessment. And we're now moving into very large scale projects now, up in the top right-hand corner there. And that's a picture of a very nice day in Scotland. I can assure you it's not always like that. This is a picture I took when I was flying back into the UK a couple of weeks ago. And this is an offshore wind farm. And we're now looking at not just components, not just individual wind turbines, but we're looking at complete projects. So to give you a sense of the scale here, again, I'll ask a question. Would anyone like to hazard a guess at the value of one of these projects, what the capital investment would be? €5, €100, €100,000? Any advance? No one's brave enough. Okay. A typical offshore wind farm here in Scotland now, you're looking at probably a minimum of $5 to $7 billion. So these are huge projects. So if you remember the slide that I showed you before about trust, about confidence, about de-risking, for any project of this size where you have an element of conformity assessment, then you de-risk that project. And as we all know, ultimately, many things are down to money now. And usually the conformity assessment is driven by the banks, the financiers, the investors, the insurance people. Okay, Asmita, if you'd be kind enough to give me my next slide. So very briefly, just to touch on the role of standards and conformity assessment in renewable energy. And I appreciate I'm being very narrow in my remarks today. But what I've highlighted here are 3 of the technical committees, the TCs, that we have under the SMB, the Standards Management Board. And again, I could not do what I do, and all of us could not do what we do within conformity assessment if we didn't have those underpinning robust standards. So I've listed there to try and give you some sense of the context here. So under TC 8082, which is PV systems, there are currently 207 publications. And that was a figure that I must admit I was ignorant of until I actually looked at the IEC website. So there's a huge resource there for you. Similarly, within TC 88, which is the wind sector, we have 55 publications and 36 items currently being worked on. And marine energy, which is, if you like, the emerging sector within what we do within renewable energy, we currently have 18 publications and another 10 underway. And here in Scotland, I think we probably have a number of the centres of excellence here for doing that. Way up in the north of Scotland, we've got colleagues from the European Marine Energy Centre, and I appreciate there are things happening in Asia and the US as well. So conformity assessment can sometimes be quite a dry subject. I would like to think, for me, it's actually quite exciting, and I get quite excited about where we're moving forward and how we are working with our colleagues on the Standards Management Board. And there's a little hyperlink in the bottom there that you'll get that gives you more detail on all of these standards. Asmita, please. Thank you very much. So I was asked to say a word or two about what I felt were some of the challenges facing deployment. And I think for me, the first one is the political will. And I'm not being party political or partisan here. I think in order to achieve the sustainability goals that we all strive for, there has to be the political will. And this is where I would encourage you within your own regions, within your own countries, to engage politically to make that happen. Because all of us sitting here in a very nice room in Edinburgh and writing fabulous standards and having the best conformity assessment in the world is not going to make any difference unless we have that political will. I think the second thing is public acceptability. And renewable energy has had its challenges over the years rather. Here in Scotland, in the early days of renewable energy, people were very concerned legitimately about the potential damage to wildlife, shadow flicker, acoustics, all of these types of issues. And I think through our standards development programme, we have and we are addressing many of those concerns. Third one here is the economic reality of where we are. So I gave you some typical figures for an offshore wind farm, and that's at the huge macro scale. Within the RE system, we also operate at the lower scale. Here in Scotland, we have what we call distributed wind. We have a number of islands, and some of them may or may not have a grid connection. And small wind turbines, 5 kilowatt, 10 kilowatt, 15 kilowatt, are a mainstay of what happens. So we're not just talking at the large scale, we're talking at the small scale as well. And that might be something which is more applicable to yourselves or in your region or in your country. And the last thing there is the scale of the challenge that we have. We have a huge challenge ahead of us. We're making great inroads in that sense. Many countries are embracing the sustainability goals. We're getting there, but we have a lot of work still to do. Asmita? Sure, no problem. I'm almost there. And I think this is almost lastly, is the importance of global collaboration. And again, I'll very quickly go through these bullet points here, Mike. So first thing is consensus agreed standards and conformity assessment. So these are things that we all agree. And as we know, consensus doesn't always mean unanimity, but we can always get a consensus position. I think that's important. We've got the confirmation of compliance. That's exactly what we do within conformity assessment. Reduction in barriers to trade, the adoption of best practice, hopefully internationally agreed best practice, and learning from one sector or geography or country to another. And we found that within the renewable energy system. If you look at what's happening with marine technology, a lot of what the guys are working on at the minute, they have taken the essence of that from what we do in the wind sector, but made it marinized so it's appropriate for the marine sector. So I think we want to continue to do that and to learn from each other and not reinvent the wheel. We've already identified many new opportunities. One of the things that we're looking at within the renewable energy system is what we're calling through life management. So this is looking at an asset from its design, its concept, its development, its manufacture, its installation, right through to its recycling, its reuse. So we're looking at the whole product life cycle there. And that's something that we can also include within our conformity assessment. I think finally, the last thing there is the reduction in costs to market. Conformity assessment, if you see it in isolation, can be seen as an additional hassle and something you have to do. If you see the bigger picture, it does actually reduce the costs to market. Asmita. Key priorities for IEC. I will simply leave these on the screen at the minute and give you a few seconds to digest what I've put up there. For me, the key thing is the first bullet point there, and this is something we discussed in the meetings that we had in preparation for this meeting. And for me, it's about accessibility. If we don't give people the accessibility to what we're doing, then it makes it very, very difficult. And you'll see there's another, a number of, my own personal views on what the key priorities for IEC should be, but I think we'll be touching on that later. And I think, Asmita, with that, we're on to the next slide. With that, Mike, I'm happy to take any questions.
Go back to that slide. You don't actually have to physically see it, but you talked about the Alistair McKinnon TV versus the famous international brand. And that reminded me, 6 years ago, shortly after I joined the IEC, I was explaining conformity assessment to my 13-year-old daughter, the kind of father I am. And I was feeling pretty pleased with myself. Then she absolutely stumped me with a question. So I said, as you just said, that it's about ensuring that customers can trust the TV. And she said, but how do they know it's going to be certified?
It will usually tell you. If you look on the box for something, you will see some form of conformity assessment mark. And well, here's a question for you. Does anyone in the room believe that IEC are a conformity assessment body? Okay, right. No one's raising their hand, which is good, because IEC are not a conformity assessment body. IEC facilitates that through standards development and through our conformity assessment programs. But the person or the organization that is taking the responsibility for that will be one of these third-party organizations. And I don't want to do any advertising here in that sense, but there are a number of global players. You all know who the names are. So the next time you're going to buy a new television or something like that, you'll all be looking at the little bottom part of the box to see who actually tested and certified that device. So you'll know that through that, Mike. Where we are within the renewable energy world, I can see a couple of hands raised in a minute, where we are in the conformity assessment world, all of our deliverables are available on the IECRE website. So whoever is managing that system, in our case, the IEC, And if someone claims that their product or process or service meets the requirements of conformity assessment, there's an easy way to check that. Go to the IEC website and you will see it there. And if it's not on the IEC website, I would quit. I'm not saying it's not certified or doesn't meet the conformity assessment criteria, but I'd be asking some questions as to why it's not there. We usually say to people, if you want to confirm the validity of someone's claim, check the source. And the source here is the IEC website.
Thanks, Alistair. I wonder if we can take the questions later. I promise you there will be ample opportunity for questions. One of the topics we're highlighting today is the importance of global collaboration. And we have, unfortunately, he couldn't be with us, Thomas Lamann-Ausgas, who's the Deputy Secretary General of the ITU, one of our most important partners and our sister organization, part of the World Standards Cooperation with us and ISO. And although he couldn't be with us, he has sent us a video message.
I'm delighted to contribute to the IEC Community Symposium and give you ITU's perspective on how digital technology standards can help unlock our green future. Artificial intelligence optimizes energy storage and distribution based on real-time demand, supply, prices, and grid conditions. AI supports ever better energy system modeling, and robots can help build solar parks, collect data, clean or repair PV cells, trim overgrown vegetation, and adjust panel angles to catch the best sun. All this supports transition to the sustainable future powered by renewable energy. However, AI must cut its own emissions too. GHG emissions by leading tech firms have risen 50% in 5 years, with water consumption up 90%. The digital industry must take responsibility for this impact. Some signs are positive. The ICT sector accounted for 60% of the world's renewable energy purchases in 2021, and telecom-related emissions appear to have stabilized despite increasing electricity consumption. However, skyrocketing growth of AI is putting a pressure on the energy supply required to feed this boom, and risks blowing up tech companies' net zero roadmaps. In truth, AI needs renewables just as renewables need AI. These transformative benefits of the green digital transition all hinge on technical standards followed by on-the-ground conformity assessments. ITU standards address emissions from the tech industry. For example, ITU-T recommendation L1305 tackles energy efficiency in data centers. L1310 defines the metric for telecom equipment, and L1470, developed with GESI, GSMA, and the Science Based Targets Initiative, shows the global tech industry's path to net zero. For developing countries, the twin transition is a chance to start fresh, drive green growth, and fulfill climate pledges under the Paris Agreement. For the least developed countries, it represents a socio-economic leapfrog opportunity. In fact, renewables present a strong business case. Even cloudy Scotland sees solar panels sprouting up, reaching 610 megawatts last year. Still, renewables depend on scale to be cost-effective, and this is specifically the task that is best addressed with interoperable global standards. Friends, green energy and digital transformation go hand in hand. Both call for multi-stakeholder collaboration. This is essential for any climate action. At COP28 last year, we rallied industry partners for green digital action. IEC and ISO were on board from the outset, reflecting the alignment in the World Standards Cooperation and our shared commitment to green standards. This year, we have also added a green computing track directly addressing AI. On 16th November in Baku, during the first ever COP Digitalization Day, we are convening a high-level roundtable together with the Azerbaijan COP29 presidency, seeking concrete commitments to green digital action. Leading standard bodies have a key role here and a responsibility. Let's intensify our collaboration and work together to standardize the green digital energy future. Thank you.
That was Thomas Lamann-Ausgas with an important message about the Green Digital Deal and about the cost in terms of sustainability of some of that emerging technologies that we're relying on to help build us a better future. So double-edged sword. I mentioned right at the beginning that we have a very distinguished panel with us today, and I'd like to introduce them to you. As I promised, you will have time to ask them questions. I'd like to introduce them first, and let's start with Omneya Sabri, who's the Executive Secretary of AFSEC. Omneya, could you tell us a little bit about your role and about AFSEC, the elevator pitch?
Good afternoon, everyone. AFSEC is the African Electrotechnical Standardization Commission. The main role of AFSEC is to promote for everything related to electrotechnical standardization and conformity assessment within the African continent. We have technical committees. They are mostly mirror of IEC committees. We have 8 technical committees that are working in different electrical aspects, mainly the smart metering, the electrical installation, the renewable energy, electromagnetic compatibility, e-mobility, low carbon hydrogen, and so on. The AFSEC was established in 2008 in South Africa, and then moved now to be based in Cairo, Egypt. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And next we have Jaidev Davle, who's an associate program officer at IRENA. Jaidev.
Thank you. So IRENA is the International Renewable Energy Agency, and essentially we're an intergovernmental organization with about 169 member countries, and our mandate basically is to support these countries in increasing their adoption of renewable energy as quickly as possible, and we have various facets to do so. I'm situated in the Innovation and Technology Center located in Bonn, and in a nutshell, what we do is analyze various energy trends and innovations happening in the space and try to provide policy guidance on how those trends can be harnessed. And my particular area of focus at IRENA is on quality infrastructure, and I look forward to sharing my views as part of this panel. Thank you.
And next we have Richard Schomburg, who's our IEC Special Envoy for Smart Electrification. Richard.
Yeah, so I've been appointed by the IEC President Committee as IEC Special Envoy for Smart Electrification. I have a large multi-energy utility executive career. I've been involved with IEC for more than 35 years. I've been 9 years chair of a TC45 instrumentation control system of nuclear power plant. And later on, I've been bringing the digitalization and complex systems engineering into the electric grid and electric system from end to end. I've been 9 years chair of TC8, which is system aspects for energy delivery, and then 9 years chair of the System Energy Smart Committee, which I hope this explanation might help understanding what I'm going to say later on.
Thank you, Richard. And next we have Victor Bayivian, who's the president of our NC in Chile. Could you perhaps, Victor, tell a little bit about yourself?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. In my case, I'm former electronic engineer. I work for more than 35 years in a multinational company, ABB. I work in several countries, in Europe and in Latin America. I ran the company in Chile for more than 10 years, and then the region for another 4 years. And since then, I became a fanatic from IEC standards. And the reason perhaps is because when I was in my previous career, I took IEC as something was there, even know who is going to work on that. But today, as I said, I am really a fanatic. And since 2010, I am running the Chilean National Committee, and I would say with a tremendous satisfaction to understand that the standards and conformity assessment are the basic for development of any country with the new technologies.
Thank you. And next we have Laura Häusler, who's a senior advisor at PTB, a German metrology organization.
Exactly. So PTB is the National Metrology Institute of Germany. So in general, we're all about precise measurements and ensuring that measurements are the same everywhere in our country and internationally. But then we also do international cooperation. I'm from the International Cooperation Department. We implement projects funded mostly by the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development in the area of quality infrastructure. So of course, also in the area of standards and especially also in the area of renewables. And personally, I'm an advisor on the trade and standards issues.
Important. Laura is an expert on international cooperation rather than conformity assessment or metrology. So no detailed technical questions, please. And Al, you've already introduced yourself. Would you like to say a few more words about IEC RE and the past 10 years? And congratulations on that important milestone.
Sure, yeah. IEC RE was really born out of discussions going back to, gosh, I think about 2010. And we were actually quite naughty girls and boys because within one of our standards, we had some conformity assessment criteria. And our colleagues within IEC said, "Whoa, you can't do this. You're being a bit naughty." So we then had to address that. And that was really the catalyst for starting the system. And then it just grew and grew and grew after that.
Thanks. And let's dive straight into the questions. And I'll stay with Al. And how essential? I mean, you've spoken about this in your presentation, but how important is the role of IEC standards and conformity assessment in the global renewable energy industry? How vital is it?
Sure. If I can probably give you two examples from Germany and Denmark, which I think are really, really good examples of what's happening. So within Germany and Denmark, there is a requirement that you must have a form of conformity assessment before you're allowed to develop a project in that sense. So friends and colleagues in Germany and Denmark, I think, are ahead of the curve in that sense. Here in the United Kingdom, there is no requirement for conformity assessment. But if you were to go 20, 30 miles from here, you'll find 3 offshore wind farms. All of them have conformity assessed wind turbines and assets. So even though it's not a requirement, usually the people that are backing that recognize the value of having that independent third-party trust and compliance. So it's nice if governments mandate it in that sense, and that's a really good way of moving it forward as they do in Germany and Denmark. But even where you don't, many people now, with the kinds of investments that are required, even for relatively modest projects, if you like, the cost benefit of conformity assessment far outweighs the risk of deploying an asset that may or may not meet a standard.
Thank you. I remind you, you will have time later for questions. Jaidev, from the perspective of Irina, of course, how do you see IEC standards and conformity assessment contributing to the take-up of renewable energy?
Thanks for the question. So yes, one thing with Irina that we're trying to do is definitely promote the importance of these tools that are available out there. And I think as Alistair mentioned in his presentation, these tools are necessary to ensure that renewable energy technologies are safe and sound and have compatibility in different markets. And I think this is where the benefits of having IEC standards comes about, because especially for developing countries, if we encourage them to already start looking into these standards and how they can integrate them into their own respective sectors, it already gives them a chance to ensure that their capabilities are robust, but they also have opportunities to also export or import products into their markets. Furthermore, the standards of IEC standards also help promote technology promotion because they're extremely robust. I mean, they're consensus driven. So by complying with them, different technologies sort of validate their efficacy and effectiveness. Furthermore, from a manufacturing point of view, and I think this is something that Alistair also mentioned in his presentation, people or renewable energy technology providers can essentially ensure that their and they're not compromising on their quality when it comes to making these components, because yeah, these standards are extremely thorough, and they provide enough guidance. And again, institutions like the IEC can be approached to get more insights on these tools. And finally, from an end user point of view, I think it just builds confidence that when a particular end user wants to purchase, say, a solar panel and it's certified by IEC, they can have a high confidence to say, yes, this is going to perform as is specified on the specification. So that's just an example of how IEC standards can contribute to renewable energy deployment moving forward. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Jaidev. And Laura, I know I introduced you as an international relations or international cooperation expert. I have a question about the importance of conformity assessment and calibration services in terms of ensuring the reliability of renewable energy.
Yeah, well, of course, they are very important. I think what's behind this question really is also the question of, well, why do we even need measurements in renewable energies? Of course, we need to ensure efficiency. We need to ensure longevity. You said, Alistair, that a lot of funds are needed. These are huge investments. We want to make sure that these investments are efficient. And for that, for example, if we stay with the example of the wind power plants, we need to make sure that the components are produced precisely the way they are needed. For example, if you think about these huge gear wheels needed in wind power plants, how do you know which system do you have to measure that they are exactly the size and shape that they need to be in order for there to not be any efficiency loss or even any dangerous, I don't know, going up in fire the plant or anything. For that, you need measurement systems, and you need systems with which you can check that your measurement systems are precise. And that's what we work on at PTB. So we try to find the best ways to ensure that whatever we produce in this area meets the requirements. Where there we have the standards, we have the list of requirements, and we need a way to find out whether these requirements are met. Other examples are also whenever we build a wind power plant, we need to find out how windy is it over there, So we need systems that are able to measure how windy it is in order to do the accurate planning, because we lose money if we build them in the wrong place, and these are huge investments. So yeah, those were a few words on the relevance of measurements.
Thank you very much. Omnea, what are the unique challenges faced by AFSEC members, for example, and other developing countries in terms of implementing renewable energies, and how do IEC standards and conformity assessment help?
So the main challenge is maybe the diverse technologies. They are evaluating very quickly, and this poses a challenge to AFSEC to face all these standards for harmonization. The different systems and technology, I mean the renewable energy and other can work together effectively, especially with the grid integration. So with different renewable energy technologies to work together, and for the African countries to work on this integration of grid integration of these different technologies, and as well as the standards. We need different standards to work together to this complicate the harmonization with different technologies of renewable energy. The enforcement is difficult as well, especially in regions with limited regulatory oversight. The cost considerations can hinder the adoption of standardization practices, particularly in developing markets. What we can say that IEC provided the standards to AFSEC, and we have such agreement to provide these standards and work at the level of the technical committees to review the standards and adopt the standards, and to allow these standards for the different African countries to use it and work on in their countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Omer. And
Thank you.
Richard, as Omer has just said, generating renewable energy is only part of the story. You then have to integrate it into the grid efficiently. How does our standards and conformity assessment help with that?
Yeah, so back to basics, PV or wind, they have a magic value proposition that actually requires massive deployment of highly dispersed, rather small resources. So the challenge for the market is the ability to supply a huge number of these generation devices, interoperable, but even better, interchangeable, and they have to be sourced from multiple vendors in competition for performance, cost, but also to prevent vendor locked-in. Well, the first value provided by, in general, by the international standards is to lower the barriers to trade by harmonizing current practices, not to brainstorm on novelties. So harmonizing current practices as stated by the UN World Trade Organization, and this is in order to enable the largest market as possible. Okay, that's in general, but IEC is striving to provide much more value than just a vast library of disconnected publications. Nowadays, the solutions to be deployed are systems collaborating with many other systems, and IEC standards are the most effective way to pre-resolve the booming complexity of all of this. IEC standards for smart electrification should be understood and seen, in fact, like coordinated building blocks fitted to match pre-designed templates or architectures. They are developed by about 30 different technical committees supported by a system committee that can provide also incubation capabilities. And this is very special within a standard development organization. This is quite unique, actually. Of course, referencing standards is great, as several of us has already mentioned, but it's of no use if we cannot assess that they've been properly implemented. There are a lot of testing houses around the world, but IEC has developed a unique conformity assessment schemes, one test in one country worth worldwide. And this is, again, quite unique to IEC. So in conclusion, to me, it's quite obvious that IEC standard and conformity assessment schemes are enablers for the energy transition by supporting somehow a seamless integration of multiple renewable energy resources into the electric system.
Thank you. And Victor, in Chile, what role have standards and conformity assessment played?
Thank you, Mike, for that question. I would say to talk about that, I would take, or I should take a lot of time, but I will try to resume. First of all, for the audience to understand the country. You know, we are a large country, from north to south, more than 8,000 kilometers, but we are a very wide country. You know, the widest part is 400 kilometers. We have the north is a desert, the drier desert in the world, and we have in the south forest, lakes, mountains, snow, etc. I mean, our geography allows us to have, in principle, a lot of energy sources. But we do not have any fossil fuel in the country. We don't have oil, gas, or coal. The only thing we have is water. And for many years, electricity was generated by hydropower plants, having 60% or 64% more or less of the power generated, and the rest was oil. Since 2013, and that's important to understand, we have no renewables energies in the country. And today, we are producing more than 62% of the energy as a renewable energy. From this 62%, more than 26% is solar PV, and we have another 13%, which is wind generation. To reach these numbers was necessary, to establish in the country certain rule of the game. Chile is a country that our economy is very much based in mining, copper, today also lithium and some other good materials that we will need in the future. But mining requires a lot of energy. And this energy, at the beginning of the 19th century, there was produced by independent power plants in the north, mainly diesel power plants. And with the years, all the system became interconnected in two big systems, the north system and the central and south systems. Both systems were running independently. Today, they are working together. That means we need to move energy from the north, where we have a lot of sources in PV, to the south, which we have also the big cities and the large consumption. Since 2010, that we became part of the IEC family, we started to work with the regulator in order to update two important codes of electrical systems. One was the consumer, which is the low voltage, the ones that anyone consume at home. And the other one was the code for generation, transmission, and distribution, minimum quality and performance requirements. And this allowed Chile to move very fast in this new renewable energy world. Today, we apply standards, IEC, for all equipment. This, I think, was mentioned by Richard and by all. This guarantee, that you will have a safety product, that you will have a high-performance product, and today, energy-efficient products. Conformity assessment. Again, this is a guarantee for the investors. The investors know that they are putting in place equipment that fulfill requirements of performance, requirements of safety, that they can really trust on the installation. And at the same time, there are other areas which is benefit from that, which is the financing areas. The bankers, they need some security when they invest, especially in this type of projects on the long-term investment. But we rest another part, which is now how we can handle in the new renewable energy the waste we are producing. Again, there we have also standard supply. Today, there are some organization in Chile which is working in how to handle the PV panels, the waste of PV panels that has to be probably reutilized, some of them and some others not. And also, I guess, that conformity assessment, in this case, IECQ probably in the future will help a lot to keep the country on environmental path.
Thank you very much, Richard. Victor, some very important points there. I promised earlier that you would have time for questions, and I saw some hands up earlier. Would those people like to raise their hands again, and I'll try to get to you first? Any questions? Could you say who you are?
Yeah. My name is Bernhard Spalt. I'm from OVE, the National Committee of Austria, and I had the pleasure to be with Alistair yesterday in a panel discussion, in a meeting, and I come back to your statement on your slides. Political awareness about conformity. And this is a question within this group here for me. We had to make our politicals aware what the positive side of conformity. First, of course, standardization is the main thing. But if we have a standard, certification for verification is a main thing to be on the safe side. We already had it. but I still want to reinforce it, and maybe you could have a few words what you wish, what we had to do to get more political requirements in to get this done.
Maybe that's a question that I could put to the whole panel afterwards as well. But Richard, still, yeah, Al, sorry, if you start off, then I'll ask the others too.
Sure, yeah, I mean, really appreciate the question, and you're absolutely right. I made a comment at another session earlier on in the week where I said we're very good at talking amongst ourselves in meetings like this, and governments and politicians are equally good at talking amongst themselves. But we tend to talk in isolation. So we talk great things here in Edinburgh, and the Scottish Parliament is 1 mile from here. We did. Some people did visit them yesterday morning, I believe, and I think that's what we need to do. And I think as professionals within this this space, we have a responsibility, because conformity assessment is not something that sort of trips off the tongue. You know, people, it takes a little bit of time to get into your head what conformity assessment actually is. In that sense, I absolutely agree with you. But I think the responsibility is on us, if you like me being an evangelist here from Glasgow to Edinburgh, for us to be evangelists to our governments, our authorities, and then really they make the decision. But we need to do that awareness raising. Could I take 30 seconds, just a little more? And it's to go back to something that Laura said, and hopefully this gives you an indication of the value of what we're doing. So in Germany, PTB are a fabulous premier organization. So within the wind sector, everything that we do is related to the wind speed. And the device for measuring a wind speed is called an anemometer, and it costs about $250. So it's a very low-cost device. But the uncertainty on that wind measurement is huge. So if we don't get that very, very simple device right, the consequences for a 15 megawatt wind turbine or a 1 gigawatt wind farm are colossal. So I think for me, that's a very simple example of something that, if you like, appears to be well down the food chain, is something that we would almost dismiss. But if we don't get that simple device right, the consequences further down the line are huge. And that's where PTB has played a huge role with your LDA, laser Doppler anemometry in that sense. So let's not underestimate the importance of what appears to be a relatively minor part of something in a standard that has enormous consequences further down the line. And sorry, I took about a minute and a half.
That's great. And I wonder if I could come to Victor and going back to to really the core issue here. From the perspective of a national committee, how important is it for you to engage with lawmakers and politicians in Chile?
Well, I think that's fundamental because, you know, at least in our countries that we are mainly consumer of goods and not the manufacturers, the standardization in a voluntary way is not really an easy job. Therefore, we need that the government introduce the standardization in the rules of the country in order to make this compulsory, and to convince the authority that the standardization and conformity assessment is not a kind of barrier for the open market, because I forgot to say, Chile, since the last 50 years, we are an open economy and all our electrical activity is in the private hands. Therefore, government needs to be convinced on the benefits, you know, on the standardization and conformity assessment in order to run these rules that will make the country make the right things in development. Therefore, for me, it's fundamental this role between we, the National Committee, and the authorities.
And on there, I mean, from your perspective, what are you doing at AFSEC in terms of engaging politicians and political leaders? what is AFSEC doing in terms of trying out to reach politicians?
Actually, AFSEC work with the national committees. So, يعني, I don't know politicians. We don't work with politicians at all, but we work at the technical level with the national committees and purely technical, and to engage them to adopt the standards in their countries, and at the same time to withdraw the national standards that are not conforming with the standards that are adopted by AFSEC.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard, is there more that the IEC could be doing?
Yeah, I think so, because we've done the heavy lifting. We have the puzzle piece on the table, but of course we have to factor in the psychological situation where regulators and government, they don't want to mandate anything, or they want to stay away mandating anything for a very simple reason. Very often, they're going to be appointed for just a couple of years. They don't want to enter into trouble of liability. If you mandate something, that means you have made a decision to select something against other things. And solutions, there are so many. There are so many standards existing in everything we're talking about, okay? So what could do IEC? I guess there is maybe a chicken and egg situation where maybe it would worth finding out success stories and people who can document the value that the conformity assessment scheme has been providing to their specific solution, whether it's people who are owning and operating infrastructures, whether it's manufacturers, actually. And of course, starting from this, you see, we can build the snowball, getting it bigger, bigger, and bigger. So there is nothing I think we need to do more inside. It is really the way to build from what already has been done, document it, and entice people outside to just try for themselves. And just the last point, you see, for manufacturers, I think, I don't know if they do it enough. Some might mention, and of course, our product is went under this IEC scheme, but it's like a small footprint mention, you see. So it would be good to have manufacturers, and of course, we have a lot of manufacturers who are sending out people in the IEC activities that they themselves get involved, their marketing people, to have even this like maybe a top line in the value proposition of what they are proposing, and document. They have to be ready to document why this performance is much better than even other product they have. And of course, this might have a premium because, of course, this might have required or requested maybe a bit of some work, but it is valued. If it's valued, well, like Lord Kelvin said, if you can measure it, you can manage it. Well, I'm just applying our master thinking.
Thank you, Richard. We have a question here from the front. If you could start by introducing yourself, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Hassan Beng. I am the NEC Secretary of Senegal. As you know, as our country is using IEC conformity assessment system by verifying the authenticity of the CB certificate, the challenge we are facing is about counterfeit products and also the management of end-of-life PV equipment. So my question is there any strategy developed by IEC to deal with that critical challenges? Thank you.
So really two critical challenges there. And let me start with Al. Counterfeit products, for example, is a huge challenge.
It is. As far as counterfeit products are concerned, I'll go back to the frightening question that Mike posed to me with his daughter in that sense. And really, this is where, as part of our conformity assessment journey, we need to be aware of what is legitimate and what is not legitimate. And I've seen many counterfeit certificates and the like over the years, often with my name on them, in that sense. No, I didn't sign that, I didn't do that. But that does happen. I think we just have to accept that's the world that we live in. But the benefit of the IEC systems is that those legitimate products, services, devices are all registered with IEC and available on the website. So that's really the way to determine what is legitimate and what isn't. But I appreciate out in the marketplace, if you like, the consumer in that sense probably doesn't have that level of engagement within conformity assessment to be able to make that distinction. But you're right, it is a challenge. There's no easy answer, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Victor in Chile, is that how big an issue is this?
Well, on the end of the 90s, we face this type of problem in Chile, you know, the counterfeit equipment arriving, especially for the consumer's goods. And this was one of the reasons why we looked to be part of the IEC and to engage the government, the authorities, the regulator on that. Since then, we have conformity assessment law in the country where every equipment arriving, you know, imported has to be certified. And for that is a kind of process. We have a national certification body, which is responsible to certify the products. For many years, we had this certification when the product was at the country. And of course, we missed during many years products coming through the custom that come into the country without being detected. And the prosecution from the authority to this product was very difficult. Today, we have engaged the custom. Today, we have the custom and the regulator making a supervision of the import equipment. And yes, today, and also, of course, the education of the consumers, because you have to educate consumers, you know, on consuming product that has certified, has the mark of certification that's provided by the regulator.
Thank you. Any more questions from the audience? Yes. Right down the end, and then we'll come to you next.
Good afternoon. I'm from the Ministry of Energy of Ghana. I'd like to find out if there is a library from which one could verify IEC accredited labs who certify equipment. Thank you.
Is there a library? Who would know that? I guess Al, as our conformity assessment expert.
Okay, if I can be quite pedantic here on the use of language in that sense. So only accreditation bodies can accredit organizations. So you'll not find accredited companies and accredited products in that sense. You'll find certified products, and those certified products may have been certified by a company who has been accredited in that sense. So in trying to address your question, if you're looking for companies that have undergone that third-party evaluation of accreditation, then if you look at your national accreditation body in your own country, here in the United Kingdom, it's what's called UCAS. In Germany, it's DAX. Most countries have their own accreditation body. So I would urge you to look at the website of the accreditation body, because they are the people who will accredit the organizations.
Thank you. And we had another question.
Thank you. Thomas Kuschal, Sweden National Committee. We talk a lot about sustainability and a green future. Why doesn't IEC have a scheme, conformity assessment scheme on sustainability?
Why don't we have, and I'm afraid that's another question for Al.
Why do I get all the difficult questions? I think it's something that we can work towards in that sense. Probably, as you know, the general meeting here has met certain criteria and has been issued with a certificate. You'll see the certificate on some of the information boards as you go around the EIC here. So it can be done, but I think it's something that the CAB, for members of CAB here, Conformity Assessment Board, that's probably something that we perhaps, with your excellent suggestion, probably want to put higher up our agenda.
Thank you. And I have a question for Laura. PTB, of course, is a national organization, but I know that you're very active internationally. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, like I said, our projects in international cooperation are funded by the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation, and with also many of the people present here in the room, we have different cooperation activities, of course, then targeted always to sustainability goals, and we always try to look at quality infrastructure as a system and to support the development of services needed for a certain goal, for example, in the area of renewable energy. And I might maybe go back to the question from earlier on about addressing governments, because that's also something that we work on a lot with our partners. It's not just about training staff to be able to do, for example, conformity assessment work, but also to train institutions and personnel on how to talk about what they do, because I think it's also a language problem, so to say. When we talk to governments, we need to understand where they come from. And to regulators, we need to understand what their need is, and then we need to talk their language. And I think for us in the quality infrastructure area, it's sometimes quite difficult because we like to be very technical, very precise, just like Alistair has shown to us. But if a government official approaches us and talks about accrediting an organization or whatever, we need to just leave them be and try to find the words, you know? I think that's very important.
So not be pedantic.
Depending on the situation.
Thank you. I'm only joking, of course. In terms of an international organization, Irina, obviously you already operate internationally, but what can we do to improve collaboration?
Okay, so there's one point I want to make, and I think this is a reflection since I work in this area at IRENA, and it's been well demonstrated actually in this discussion so far. Is one thing that I think we have to do collectively is sort of explain what quality infrastructure is in both simple terms and also at the technical level, depends on who the audience is. IRENA obviously is an intergovernmental organization, so we work with policymakers who are not necessarily technical experts. And to sort of continue on PTB's, Laura's remarks, we try our best to essentially make it as simple as possible for these people to understand what these various pillars entail and why it's important. Going to the start of the meeting as well, I think what Alistair mentioned about communities working in silos, I think this is where organizations like IRENA and others play a pivotal role, where we are able to hopefully bring these stakeholders together and have a fluid exchange of ideas. I mean, to answer your question, events like these, the annual meeting where you're inviting a range of stakeholders to come and share our views, I think is an important way to sort of communicate the message. One idea that just came about, reacting to what Richard said, is also perhaps having awareness campaigns on the importance of standards and why they're important is important. Furthermore, having dedicated technical cooperation projects is also another avenue to take this forward. I mean, together with my colleagues at PTB, we're also working on dedicated projects in particular markets to inform the necessity of having standardizations and other QI services in particular energy sectors. So there are various avenues that are available, and it's just a matter of finding which ones are conducive depending on the national or regional context. So yeah.
So you've touched on a very important issue there, capacity building, and I'd like to go back to Victor. Do you feel that there's more that the IEC could be doing to support you in Chile in terms of materials or support for capacity building?
You know, the question if the IEC can do more, I would say is the other way around. Because we have the problem, and we have to bring the problem to IEC. But because IEC, as a worldwide organization with so many experience, they can really share with us experiences already done that will serve to us in our country. I think that participating in this type of general meetings, organizing in our countries, you know, the meetings from the technical committees, bringing some workshops and bringing specialists from IEC on the particular topics. That's the support we need, because it's the way that we can show the market that this organization is not trying to influence anybody from any particular technology. By the way, what this organization is trying to do is to bring the market the openness necessary, you know, to deal in a fair way.
Thank you. And of course, Richard, this is really what your role as a special envoy is about. And without stalking you, I know that in recent months you've been to India and you've been to North Africa. Could you tell us a little bit more about your activities as special envoy?
Yeah, I've been to all those places, but also China a lot, the US, many places in Europe. So what's interesting is really a kind of outside focus and role. So I deliberately try to put on the shoes of others and other standard organizations, because there are other standard organizations or other associations or other engineering societies, to understand their DNA, understand what are their driving forces, what they're looking for. And in many cases, they don't even know what IEC has done or what IEC could do that would avoid duplication of efforts. You see, what is striking me is I can see still a lot of duplication of efforts, and not necessarily because there is a competition willingness. And as a matter of fact, there are many members of those organizations that are also members of IEC. And so it's very interesting when I enter into some discussions where people are blaming the SDOs, saying, oh, you know what, the SDOs are competing against themselves. It should not happen. I'm very happy all the time to remind them that actually the SDOs don't exist. IEC doesn't exist. It is actually the Assembly of National Committees. And the members of those national committees are also members of the other organization. So basically, if there is any competition, maybe they are, for part of it, responsible, right? So, okay, so basically to your question, I represent the IEC president or the IEC CEO, worldwide on just smart electrification. And we respond to invitations to attend many different events. And basically, it is for me the opportunity to make sure people understand what IEC is, what IEC has been doing, and what IEC is currently doing to even entice them to come over.
Thanks very much, and there's a message in that Richard is available on invitation, and happy to come and see you. Last quick fire round, and very short answers. And we discussed this when we were preparing for this meeting. What keeps you awake at night? What's your biggest worry for the future? Let's start with Al.
probably for me that we don't get the message across. I think our standards are brilliant. I think our conformity assessment is brilliant. We just need to make it happen. And that's the biggest challenge I think we have. We've lots to do to improve standards and conformity assessment, but what we have at the minute is very much fit for purpose. We need to get the message across. Laura.
Yeah, it's a similar direction, but I'm worried that we don't understand each other enough, that we don't have enough time often to go and try to see the other perspective, to understand maybe if there's low participation, for example, why is it, what's happening, what's behind this, and what can we do to change it. So yeah, we don't have the time often to really go into the deep and ask the right questions.
Wow, difficult question, because I never has nightmares, but no, I think that what concerns to me is that today we are very much focused in electrification. I mean, electrification for everybody, but at the same time we are worried about our environment. We are worried about sustainability, and somehow I see that we are running in parallel ways. We are trying to promote renewable energies. We are trying to promote electrification, but at the same time, we do not look that to reach this type of technology, we need to manage the waste. And how we are going to manage the waste in the future? Batteries, for instance. PV panels. I mean, we are discussing, but we are in the middle of the desert in Chile, and we have tons and tons of PV panels that are just waiting, to do something with that. Therefore, this, I would say, is my main concern.
And Richard.
Well, there are many concerns, and I have to admit that I don't sleep much because there are so many dimensions to understand, to take into account, to consider, to try to manage. And there are more and more, given those systems interacting with much more systems. And my issue is, it's really the complexity and therefore the resources that are available, and always, even though we might have a lot of resources, they are still too limited to really undertake what we hear, even in the different SDOs, but even just within the IEC. So a main concern would be about the decision process, to focus just on a few targets, really focusing on a few targets, because those might have the largest impact for the lowest cost and lowest efforts. The issue is that there are too many, to me, to be frank with you, I see too many new whips, new work attempt proposals popping up from everywhere, and they all make sense. But the issue is there is a need to make some decisions, to then knuckle down just on a very few things, advance quickly on those, and then, therefore, after that, and undertake other things.
Thank you. Jaida.
Yeah, to keep it brief, 2 points. What keeps me awake on this topic is, number one, how do you make quality infrastructure a cool topic for people to engage in? Because sometimes people find it very, I'm sorry for the language, boring, and they don't want to really learn about it. So how do you make it an attractive topic for them to delve into? That's point number one, and I think we're doing our best over here to do that. And number two, I think, based on the discussion, is how do you create a harmonized system that basically is beneficial for everyone, especially for emerging and developing economies. I mean, for those people, they really have an opportunity to learn from already established practices and, make a significant jump forward with regards to their own energy planning. So how do you create a system which is readily accessible and that they can, jump straight into the matters and then start to implement all the services that are available? That's something I hope that we can achieve quickly, because time is running out in terms of achieving our climate goals. So yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Now.
Yes, it's very simple for me. It's our indicator of success in AFSEC is for countries and the national committees to adopt the standards that are adopted by AFSEC, and this is a very important as indicator of our success, as well as the stakeholder engagement. This is very important for AFSEC because we work on regional level with different entities. So this is very important for AFSEC to have this engagement with other stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this session today is really about your questions. And there's a gentleman sitting right at the back that put his hand up.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Engineer Isa Seka from Nigeria Standard Body. I think recently we had a meeting during the webinar on IEC discussing certification of personal competency. So I don't know what IEC is doing at the moment, IEC doing at the moment to over that particular certification of personal COPC as discussed in the webinar. I think that will boost maybe this conformity assessment. Once you have a system in place and you have enough people to monitor that particular system and the system will not go down, and it's kind of giving us a sustainability. So I want to know what IEC is doing that, and also to ask IEC maybe she should go into supporting the developing countries through support, equipment support to boost that competency. Thank you.
Thank you. So two questions there. Let's start with the second one, and which is about IEC supporting developing countries. Of course, we have an affiliate program which goes in that direction. And Richard, I wonder if you'd like to say a few words.
Yeah, no, the affiliate program, I think, is great. It's really open. It's inviting. And I think it has proven in the past years to really help people getting in the loop. Of course, we could ask AFSEC to testify about this. It's a very good example of even leveraging on this program. And it's a matter of also advertising this within the different countries you think could benefit from it. And of course, we have to keep in mind that this is also benefiting to IEC. Of course, they have very special conditions to be members. It's adapted for the purpose, but this is not just a kind of charity of IEC or the so-called developed countries. There is a real value brought into IEC, because let me just tell you one thing. To me, the so-called developing countries have a huge advantage over the so-called developed countries, which is that they can leapfrog directly to the right advanced architectures and templates of solutions, where most of the so-called developed countries have huge legacy that is preventing them to move quickly or to really reorganize or re-question things in place.
And Omne, I'm obliged to ask you, in terms of supporting developing countries.
In that regard, it's a good opportunity for all the affiliate members to get acquainted with the work with IEC, and with a good network as well, because the yesterday meeting was for AFSEC is good to get to know the other countries which are non-AFSEC members. We have, because I have only 16 members, but the others, we get to know what they're doing and make a good networking with them to attract them being AFSEC members as well.
And of course, IEC signed an important agreement with AFSEC not so long ago.
The IEC agreement. Yes, we have an IEC agreement, but not only IEC, but we have agreements with other standardized institutions like Sensenelec, IEEE, the Chinese standardization board as well. So we are working on different levels, as well as the regional level with APOA, with ARSO, and others. So this gives us the opportunity to get networking with other African countries as well as the international countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, very much. You've been an excellent audience, plenty of questions, and I'd like a round of applause for our fantastic panel. And I hope to see you all again soon. Thank